My father said there were two kinds of people in the world: givers and takers. The takers may eat better, but the givers sleep better. Marlo Thomas, American actress, producer, author, and social activist. All right. Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight is another episode of Dad Talk. Dad Talk is my series to bring on everyday dads to talk about, well, what's important to them. The goal of Dad Talk is to raise dad voices so there's no argument and no debate. And my only requirement is that we keep it family friendly and we talk about whatever they want to talk about that's related to being a dad. Tonight, he goes by Free. He joins me on this episode to discuss raising independent children. Please welcome Free to the show. And click that button. Do we got it? All right, Free, how are you? Think I've hold on, give me a second. I promise I'll fix this. You're muted. I think you're muted on your end. Did we get it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go. All right. Sorry. This is you'll be the second person that I've had on the show since I started using Rumble Studio. So I'm still kind of working my way around navigating all the controls. So we're here to talk about raising independent children. So let's dive right in. Tell me a little bit, and the audience, a little bit about yourself. As a dad, the kids, all that good stuff. Well, whatever it is that you're comfortable letting us know about.
So, as a parent, I'm a single dad. I'm divorced. Uh, I have full custody of my youngest son, who is a senior in high school. So, we are in the home stretch here. We are heading off to college soon, hopefully, and navigating all of that and just having a lot of fun and, raising my third boy here. So, this is my third young man, and the oldest is in his mid 20s, and I have another one that's in college, and this is the youngest.
Gotcha. So I know who to go to for all the answers.
Well,
Mine is
I
5.
was telling my friends when I was going to be on here, if you just do the opposite of what I tell you to do, or maybe it's a do as I say, not as I do type situation. So you'll have to determine that yourself.
Right. No, it's fun. Like my son is 5. So we got a long way to go before he's ready to even think about college. And so lots of fun ahead for me. So you've raised 3 boys. What was it like raising 3 boys?
It was great. I mean, I always joke that God decided that I couldn't handle a girl, and that's why I got 3 boys. And I really do think that was not by accident. So, I'm a guy's guy. I'm, kind of, you're kind of macho type A kind of guy, and
Mhm.
so I was, you know, I think I was well suited for 3 boys and the wildness and all the male things, the testosterone,
Right.
the fast cars, all that stuff.
Right. I'm looking forward to it. And so far I have not been disappointed. So let's back up a little bit. When you had, like, say, your first son, and if you can remember, and I know that we're getting old, so memory is, it's somewhere there. Tell me, like, if you can remember what your feelings were, or just kind of like the thoughts that you were having, like, maybe some anticipation, like, and then kind of how that, ended up playing out.
Yeah, I mean, I was in college. It was unexpected,
Mhm.
and so it was, kind of diving in head first and learning on the fly. It wasn't something I was expecting. Wasn't something that I'd planned for. I was still in school, so it was wild. But at the same time, I feel like it probably wasn't a bad way for it to happen.
Mhm.
That just kind of like ripping the band-aid off kind of thing. Like, all right, we're doing this. So I didn't have a lot of build up and anticipation and did I plan enough or whatever. It was just kind of boots on the ground, hit the ground running kind of thing.
Right. And if you were judging some, you had 3, right? And one of them is just getting ready to, or they're hitting adulthood. And so the other 2 have already hit adulthood. So when you look back, like, do you think, "Man, I really just missed the mark on so many things," or are you like, all things considered, I didn't do that bad."
Depends on the day, really.
Okay.
Some days you're like blown away by how amazing they turned out and just thankful that everything's gone well. You see some of the tragedies that happen in the world and you say, thank God that wasn't us.
Mhm,
And some of the pitfalls of things that happen in their schools. And so there's certain days where you feel like, wow, I really did great. And then there's other days where it's just like, you feel like you couldn't say anything right. And,
mhm,
you make every wrong decision and you speak up when you shouldn't have spoken up and you're quiet when you should have said something. And, it's life 24/7.
mhm,
It's like a job that never ends, that there's always overtime. There's always more hours to put in. There's always more things on the to-do list. The inbox is always full,
mhm,
but you just kind of, try to live in the moment and enjoy what you can enjoy. And the tough times, try to make them less tough.
mhm.
And that's really the way I tried to do it.
That's awesome. Did you have any kind of, like, expect so I feel like every parent, they before they're a parent, they have this expectation of what they're gonna be like. And then there's the reality, right? And it's funny because my expectation, especially being a libertarian, was really turned on its head. And, because like I come from a conservative background. I was a conservative Republican growing up in my, younger years. And so like one big thing that's really huge in the libertarian community, we talk about like spanking and corporal punishment. And, if you'd asked me like 20 years ago, like DL, what do you think of spanking? I'd be like, well, spare the rod, spoil the child. And I have like almost done an entire 180 from that perspective being older. Now I'm 40 and I had my son when I was 40, so I'm 46 now. Did you experience something similar having your first child when you were younger, or was it just something that maybe you kind of grew into and then kind of kind of go into detail, if you will, about that?
Yeah, like for punishments and stuff, I can't remember really any like spanking.
Mhm.
Um, Now when they've gotten older, there's been some, you know, stuff where, they try to get past you and you block them with your body or,
Right,
stuff
right.
like that where, it's kind of a men thing,
Yeah.
and, but when they were younger, like, I'm from the South side of Chicago and, we're kind of like, a smack to the head kind of thing. And,
Mhm.
like, straighten up kind of, that kind of thing. The thing that worked best for me that I realized was we would have them sit on the stairs.
Mhm.
And I realized that it was just as much for me as it was for them. Like
Mhm.
I needed the 5 minutes to cool off, maybe even more than they needed the 5 minutes to cool off.
Right.
And by, just having a clean break and saying, enough of this, go sit on the stairs, like it diffused it. Like I
Right.
don't think there's any right answer and there's definitely wrong answers,
Sure.
but you got to kind of try different stuff and different kids need different things. I was a longtime baseball coach and there was a football coach that said, when kids get to college, you look at them and you realize what they need. And some kids got too much crap at home and need whipped cream. And some kids got too much whipped cream at home and need some crap. And he
Mhm.
used a different word for crap. But,
Sure, sure.
you know, um, and I think that's kind of a thing with the kids, at certain times, they need somebody to, tell them I'm in charge and
Mhm.
I'm not listening to this. And then at other times, they need you to listen and be nurturing and, you know, leave aside all the male stuff and
Mhm.
be a parent. So
Interesting. Did you and the broader point of my question, which and what I would like to explore a little more, is the changes that you made, and then were they more like gradual, and then you just looked back over time and you saw like, wow, I've changed, or did you notice, like for me, because again, I'm kind of comparing my 20-year-old self to my 40-year-old self. So there's a huge gap in between. There isn't any kid to have looked back and go, "Wow, I really have changed over the years." And plus, I've only got a 5-year-old, so it's only been 5 years. But I've noticed that my expectations of what I would be like as a parent are entirely not in any way what I thought they would be. And so I'm just curious if, being a younger person and having a child, that you experience something similar.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that if I would have had the kids at the age you did,
Mhm,
I would have been a lot different. Like I would have
mhm.
been calmer from the get go, and I was pretty wild when I was younger, and
Yeah.
so like my oldest son, I always joke that he was like an adult when he was 5, and he was in charge when he was 6,
Mm,
and like he would put himself to bed. He would get up and he would, oh, I guess it's time for bed. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, it is time for bed. And, so he's always been more mature than me. And he's
right,
probably been smarter than me since he was 6 too.
right,
So like every kid's different. And you just kind of like you learn as much from them as they learn from you,
right,
and you learn about how to interact with people, how to talk to people. Like you learn all that all over again, every kid.
right. It's interesting. Like I can't express the same with every kid per se, but I am noticing that I'm like relearning things as I go along as a dad. And it's not just like, it's not I pointed out spanking just because it's an easy example, but there are other things as well, like just my patience in general. One of the things that I like to tell people is like, I can be a hothead, especially in person. So like I'm not, like I'm actually nicer online than I am in
You're
I
so
can.
chill online. Yeah.
Right, I can be. I'm like, if people met me in person and it's the right situation, they're gonna be like, "Whoa, wait a minute, who's this guy?" Especially if I'm running a
I like
project.
your morning shows because you're like so zen. It's
Right,
like a nice cup of coffee and just,
right.
listen to you talk about what's going on, and it's chill.
Yeah, yeah, well, and part of it is, like when I started the show, I was like, I want to talk about politics. I'm like, but and I didn't at the time know that there were a bazillion other podcasts. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I kind of came into this ignorant, and I just was like, what am I gonna, how am I gonna do this? And I thought, that's where the name Liberty Dad came from. I was like, all right, well, I want to talk about things related to liberty and freedom and stuff like that. But I'm also a dad now, or I will be a dad, because the idea was before my son was born. And so then I just kind of merged the two ideas, and I was like, all right, I want to be, like this persona, per se, where I am more chill, and I am, and through the process of that, and more importantly, through the process of actually having a child, because I started thinking about like, what kind of person do I want to be? And so then I was like, all right, I'm going to have to be different to be that person. So for one example is, I've changed my expectations. I'm like, all right, well, little kids do this or that, whatever it is, draw on the walls, whatever. And so therefore, I should expect it. And if I should expect it, then there's really no reason to get super angry. That doesn't mean it was a good thing. It just means, okay, here it is. We're facing it now. We knew it was coming. Today's the day. Now, how do we handle it? Now that I've, been expecting it, it's not a surprise. So I've just changed a lot. So I think it's fascinating, and I'm very curious to hear just more of, how you changed as a dad, especially with 3 kids. I mean, I don't we're not going to have 3 kids, but I just think it's really fascinating because I'm one of 3, and I watched my parents change as well. So, what kind of, you know, I guess the biggest question I have when it comes to like 3 boys. Tell me some of your management strategies for managing 3 boys who are, I assume, relatively different in their personalities. And, sometimes those personalities might even clash, siblings. sibling rivalry and whatnot. So what kind of strategies have you employed or learned to employ over the years?
Yeah. So again, it's just treating each of them like people. And I
Mhm,
think, I think like, there's positives to doing it at your age and there's positives to doing it at the age that I
mhm.
started at.
Right.
And
More energy.
a lot more energy. Um, now I have a hard time waiting up for him to get home from like a school dance or something. But
Right.
um, like I don't think I didn't overthink it and I didn't have parenting books. And
Mhm,
the other thing is I didn't have nice things. So if they drew on the wall, like I probably wouldn't even notice for like a week. Right.
mm,
And, so it wasn't like they were detracting it all from the life that I had. They were adding to the life that I was building and they just became part of that organically. And so it just became like almost like a team sport,
mhm,
like you play with the team you got and
mhm,
you try to make the best of it. So and they're extremely different, which was good in my case because like I said, the oldest was very responsible and very set in his ways and like could be on autopilot and I really never worried about him. And
mhm,
then the middle guy, he's on the spectrum, so we had a lot going on with him, especially when he was younger.
mhm.
And so it was nice that the older one didn't have like he wasn't real needy or clingy or it allowed us the time to work with the younger guy. And they're far apart in age, they're about 4 years each. And so then the youngest, like he was the wildest of the bunch. And so by the time he came along, I knew a little bit more.
Mhm.
I had more money, like everything was better.
Right.
And so it was, kind of easier to deal with that because it wasn't like I was learning for the first time. So the first time something happened, it was like, oh, this has happened before.
Mm, mhm. I gotcha. So the title of the topic was raising independent children. So let's dive into because you didn't just raise one independent child, so you got like three, and presumably the goal, at least at some point, was, hey, I want all my children to be independent. So define for us what it means to you to be independent, and then let's just explore and discuss, some of the things that you did to raise your boys to be independent and how that turned out.
Yeah, I think the first one would be that I always treated them like an adult.
Mhm.
And by that I don't mean I let them do whatever they want but like I don't feel like I ever like talked down to them or treated them like they had less intelligence.
Mhm.
I always like would talk to them like I would talk to anybody else. Probably from lack of skill on my part, like that I
Mhm.
didn't know any better,
Right.
but I think it formed a relationship that made it easier to teach them to be a man and all of the things that need to be accomplished to send them out into the real world.
Mhm.
So one of the things, and I was actually talking to my son about this and I said, well, what did I do well and what did I do poorly? And
Mhm.
this is the first time I've ever talked about this and I really don't even think about it very much. So um but one of the things, and my ex-girlfriend noticed this at one point, I ask a lot of questions, and which I think is good because I podcast and I interview people and
Mhm.
I'm just naturally curious. But I realized with the kids, instead of like telling them, well, you got to apply for colleges and you got to do this and you got to do that, I would just ask endless questions. And my youngest son kind of thinks it's funny that if he doesn't answer the question, he knows he's not off the hook, that there's another question coming. And so he tries a little harder in the early ones, trying to get out of the conversation.
Mhm.
But just asking him a bunch of questions like, so what do you think you would do first? And well, what if that doesn't work? And instead of saying, well, that's stupid, don't do that, that's never going to work. I just ask questions and I do it with everything. I do it like with my business, and I'll ask him questions. I do online stuff, and so I ask him, well, what do you watch? What do you prefer? What that kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
just questions from all areas, right? Like not just about their life and hey Chris, um, not just about their life, but like about my life. Like, do you think I should buy a car? Whatever it is, and I'll just, well, what do you think? Do you think this is comfortable? What would you buy if you were buying one? And I just am naturally like that. And so when I realized that that was like a better way of doing it, I made that more part of the way I taught them stuff. And so we always dissect things like, what do you think it costs to build a 50-story building? Like, how many units do you think is in that building? What do you think they sell them for? Like, and just, kind of deconstruct things and ask them how they would do it. Like,
Mhm.
would you ever live in a building like that? And I'm creative and, like I said, naturally curious. So it was kind of trying to teach them to be that way because I think that's a more fun way of living.
Mhm. Interesting. And did you so I presume that you gave relatively similar lessons. I'm sure that you tailored it to, your different boys, based on their personalities. But what did you see in terms of, applying that methodology or that strategy, of asking a lot of questions and then the results of, hey, how independent do you believe that they ended up being compared to maybe what your goal was?
Well, I think boys are very independent naturally.
Mhm.
And so when they hit a certain age, it's like, I'm lucky if I get a message back when I text them. So, like,
Right.
you end up begging them, like, can we talk like this month sometime? And, and if not, it's like, a couple text messages here or there. And um, so they're on that path, I believe.
Mhm.
And so it's just a matter of teaching them decision making skills and how to plan for life and
Mhm.
things that I always want them to avoid the mistakes that are just simple mistakes that could be avoided.
Right.
Like do it now instead of, you know, saying you'll do it later and then forgetting to do it. Those types
Wait
of
a minute,
things.
you've been talking to my wife?
Yeah, right.
I'm notorious for that. I think she mentioned it the other day. She was like, "I'm telling you so that you'll go do it now so that you don't forget and then, not do it at all."
Well, again, it's a do as I say, not as I do type thing, right?
Right.
And I say that to him all the time. Like, all right, I know I don't do this, but
Right.
wouldn't your life be better if you just did it now instead of all school week? I'm nagging you to do something you could have done on a Sunday in five
Right.
minutes.
Yeah, where it's funny that you mentioned, the do as I say, not as I do, because I was a notoriously terrible student. Now I didn't have problem with the work per se. I just had problem doing the work. And, because like I just didn't care about it. And I would be and a lot of times I would just be like, "Oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'll do it." So I ended up being the guy that like rushes to do it at the last minute. Like something's due on Friday, a 10-page report, and I've just started it like maybe Wednesday, probably Thursday though. Right, and that was the kind of person. So now my son's 5, he has homework that he has to do, and so he likes playing, like, Minecraft and watching TV, and so what we're doing is we're front loading all of his work as much as we can at the beginning of the week so that, and I tell him, I'm like, "We want you to, do all your work or, do it over the next, the course of, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever, so that come the weekend, you can play a lot. You can play a lot more." So I'm, like, trying to teach him to basically be better than I was. So that's a fun little story there.
Yeah. And, like, so it's trying different things, right? Like sometimes you come in hot, sometimes you come in chill.
Mhm.
Recently, we've lived in the place we're in now for a couple years, and we still haven't done some of the stuff we intended to do initially.
Right.
And so I was saying in the fall, if we don't get this stuff done by Christmas break and this place is still a disaster, we should just do the bathroom.
Mhm.
We should just tear that up. The place is a mess, anyways. And all of a sudden he's like, "Ooh, I don't want to do that." So, like, just, different tactics and, you know, saying like, well, I could go easy on you or I could go hard on you, or, you get this out of the way and I'll stop talking, or
Mhm.
you'll just hear this voice until it gets done. And it's different with this guy because it's just me and him. It's just been me and him for years. So, it's always us. Like we're like kind of roommates,
Mhm.
and the weird roommate relationship of I'm the roommate that's in charge, and
Right.
he's basically a squatter, and has to sing for his food.
Right. That's too funny. Did you find that you changed in the terms of like do as I say, not as I do, in the process of teaching your boys to be different than what you were, or are, however you want to phrase it? Did you find that you actually started changing? Because I'm noticing that my ability to plan and to kind of stick to a schedule is getting better. It's not really that impressive just yet, but it is better. And like, so I'm putting more attention into like, let me start doing this earlier than later, even for my own stuff that's unrelated to him. Did you notice anything like that with yourself?
Well, I think just as a human being, you got to change constantly and
Mhm.
try to improve. And especially as you get older, you got to take better care of yourself and eat better. And all these things take more work. So, yeah, I mean, you make mistakes and there's nothing worse than making a mistake as a parent. It's
Mhm.
like you get fired from a job, you go get another job. You have a terrible day as a parent, like you're going to wear that for a while.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, just and I think it's honesty, right? So like that was the other thing is, we're living in this age of fentanyl and teenage pregnancy and all these problems that like, we didn't have, and or problems that we might have had but seem like escalated or
Mhm.
more impactful, like we had like relationships and stuff but not social media where everybody's judging us about our relationships,
Right.
and if you didn't get invited to a party, you see everybody went to the party and you have to sit there and say, well, I didn't get invited, so like everything seems like it's like on steroids. And so it's like honesty. So I say to my kids, like, you are the most important thing to me.
Mhm.
I will never judge you if you tell me. Like that's going to be our deal. Like you tell me what trouble you're in, I am not going to judge you. I'm going to help you. Whatever it is, like I am on your side, because the worst thing that could possibly happen is you hide something from me and it gets worse.
Mhm.
And so to me, like it was a contract that like I don't know if you would willingly enter into,
Mhm.
because obviously if something really bad happens, you're kind of removing your right to preach about it or get mad or yell or whatever. But like to me it was a deal I was willing to make. And
Right.
so like just being like that honest, like opening up your heart and saying you are the most important thing in the entire world, whatever it takes, I am going to help you out. And if that means I got to pretend to not be your dad for an hour or 2 hours, and again, my advice is based on I've been extremely blessed and lucky and fortunate that nothing bad like that has ever happened. So I don't know if it's the right route, but for
Right.
me, it's worked to this point.
Gotcha. That's interesting. What's your take on, and I think this will be a really great question for you in particular because you raised 3 boys. What's your take on masculinity today? Just the vibe that we see, the attitude toward it. What is your take?
Yeah. So again, like it's an interesting thing for me because like I'm pretty, I don't know if macho is the word or
Mhm.
what word the kids use nowadays, but like I mean I'm you know very very male,
Mhm.
and we were talking in my group of friends about like being an alpha male, or whatever that is, like I'm probably that, whatever it is. And but like for me it's been again, like, you got to be willing to be vulnerable and expose yourself and talk about the things that have gone terribly in your life and your biggest disappointments. Those are the best teaching moments when you can tell your kid, this was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And here's what I would do differently if it happened again. But this is how I bounced back from it. And so, like things like that, like I've tried to teach my kids to be themselves and
Mhm.
be individuals and be independent and used like my flaws and my problems and my relationship breakups and those types of things as teachable moments to say, you've got to decide what you want. World be damned. Pick yourself. You've got to live with yourself. Don't worry about other people's opinions. And that's kind of a common theme that we go back to a lot with the teenagers because, you know, again, with social media and everything that's going on, there's just so much focus on, do they have the right clothes? Do they have the right haircut? Do they hang out with the right people? Are they involved in the right activities? Do they have the material things? Do they make people laugh? Are they smart? All of these things. And at the end of the day, even, if you have a big family or whatever, like it's just you and
Mhm.
you've got to live with yourself. You've got to be comfortable with yourself. You've got to be happy with the choices you've made. And so it's trying to figure out different ways of articulating that and telling them as often as possible because you never know, especially with boys. I think you never know like what's inside of them because they won't
Mhm.
say.
Right. So it sounds like, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like the external view of the world, if you will, around masculinity and manhood, not really all that relevant to you because you're keeping a good relationship with your boys and you're keeping it focused on, what is it, what are the lessons that I need to teach you? Let me be open and forthright with you. Please be open and forthright with me. Text me once in a while as well. So it seems very like you've worked it out where maybe the outside world doesn't really matter as much. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, you
I mean,
try to teach them that.
I know it plays a role, so I'm not trying to suggest, like, it doesn't matter at all. I'm just saying, like, maybe, you know, maybe you've worked it out where it does matter, but it's not a stumbling block for you.
Yeah, it's to me, it's about being collaborative with them and
Mhm,
just assuming that they need that.
mhm,
And, like if a friend has a problem, like they're trying to quit a habit or something like that, like
mhm.
you kind of deal with them differently than if it was just a Friday night hanging out.
Right.
And with kids, like you got to kind of assume that they're working on something and deal with them like that.
Mhm.
But again, that's kind of my worldview, like that's why I was a good coach because I'm good at coaching and I'm
Right.
good at breaking stuff down. I'm good at delivering information. And so I kind of have coached them their entire lives. Now there's
Right.
other things I'm sure I'm severely deficient in, but I'm good at breaking down information and, you know, at least I feel like I'm good at querying whether they understood it and whether they're able to adapt to it and do it themselves. So it's more, I guess that's tied into the, I'll always be there for you. It's like a collaboration. Like I'm on your team. I'll do whatever. I'll talk about whatever. I'll help you with whatever. I'll drive you wherever. Like just let me know what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking a little distracted. I was just checking some of the comments because not all of the comments, I just wanna interject here really quickly for people. Not all of the comments, from all of the platforms are showing up. That's an issue that I currently have and I'm still working on. So, if you are on Rumble or YouTube, the any comments will come through, but if you're, watching this on Facebook, the comments will not come through, but I am, checking to see if there's comments there, and I noticed that there's a couple comments here, one from Terry Batts, I believe. "Hi, everyone. How are you?" Hi, Terry. Thanks for joining. I just wanted to kind of at least mention and let people know that if you're in the chat on Twitter or on Facebook, I apologize. They will not be able to come up. And so if I miss it, I apologize. So anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about. So yeah, because for me, some of the things that I like right now, my son is 5. So a lot of things I think are not really an issue for me just yet because he's 5. And right now, he's the simplest, you know, if you ask him like, hey, why'd you play with that little kid? Like, if you were to ask him, he'd be like, they wanted to play with me. Like he doesn't have the weight of the world or all these things going on in his mind. He's just like, I take him somewhere to a park and there's another little kid and he's like, hi, want to play? That's it. That's the criteria for associating, right? Like there's nothing else to worry about. And so I'm just like, a lot of this is fascinating to me because I'm like, what do I have to look forward to in a sense? Because I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what it's going to be like when he's 10 or 15 or even 20. Like I've got no clue. And it's going to be entirely new territory for me. So this is a fascinating conversation for me. Um, you know, now if you would, and you can decline if you want, I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot a little bit. What's one thing, or maybe even more if you've got some interesting stories, but what's one thing that you look back and you're like, yeah, I really should have done better on that, or I wish I would have, like something that you just kind of look back and maybe not repeatedly look at and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But just as you're reflecting, thinking, man, I wish I would have known better.
Similar to like what you talked about, like, temper stuff and, just being nicer and living in the moment more. I mean, those are going to be the regrets I would assume everyone will have.
Mhm.
And like one tip I read online one time, a long time ago, is people judge you on the first 5 minutes you're with them.
Mhm.
And so like I'm like my brain's like a computer where like I put something in it and I get kind of obsessed with it and I'm like gonna do it. And so I started making a concerted effort. The first 5 minutes I was home from work, I wasn't gonna start barking orders. I wasn't gonna chew anybody out. Like, and I'm overstating it, but like I
Mhm.
would like uh like when he comes home now from school, I say, hey buddy, like I still like it's I'm not sure it comes naturally to me, but uh he got an acceptance from school from one of the schools, and it's the most expensive school he applied to.
Mhm.
And he texted me from school and he was like, I got in. And I was like, well, how much is it? And I was like, wait, no. Uh, Congratulations.
Right.
That's the correct response here is
Right.
congratulations. And I was like, all right, like, and I mentally scheduled in my head, like, when am I going to say how much is it?
Mhm.
And so I then he came home from school. I congratulated him again. I blew up his ego and told him what a fantastic journey he's been on and so proud of him. I can't believe he did this. This is
Mhm.
great. And then one of the things we do is we walk together. And so we went for a walk, and on the walk I said, "Well, you know what I want to ask, right?"
Mhm.
And he's like, "Money." And I'm like, "Yep." And so and even like he's applying to one out of state school. And I said, well, can I tell you we talked about a negative thing about it. And I
Right.
said, well, can I tell you the other two negative things just to get the negative things off? And like, it's kind of like setting it up and giving
Mhm.
them buy-in instead of just being like, and another thing that's wrong with your stupid idea is
Right.
this, and so it's just, because like one of the things is you got to know how they are, but also even probably more important, you got to know how you are. And
Mhm.
I know that I'm like way too much to handle like all of the time. And then
Okay.
my brain goes faster than anybody else. I talk faster. I'm, you know, I'm bolder. I'm my words can be more cutting. Like I know all of those things about me.
Right.
And so I try to avoid, all right, so let's not be hell on wheels in this conversation. Let's try a different tactic.
Right.
And sometimes I'll last 5 seconds and sometimes I actually make it through the conversation.
That's interesting because one of my favorite quotes is "Know thyself," and I tell this to like my wife and my friends, and I'm like, Look, you need to know who you are because how do you improve if you don't know who you are? If you want to be a better person, like you, and it doesn't matter what age you are, you could be 10 and you want to be a little bit better at maybe a sport, in the next season, you got to know where you are. But if you're 20 and you want to be a little bit better at college than you were at, say, maybe in high school, you got to know yourself. And again, at 46, which I am, if I want to be a better person, better than I am now at 50, I need to know myself. So do you think, because it sounds like you have a good grasp of who you are, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, because I know who I am, I've got it all worked out and everything is kosher. Like it can mean like, yeah, I made some mistakes and I look back and go, oh man. But do you think that message, a similar message of know thyself, is going through to your boys just by watching you and observing and going, "Okay, dad, because they're gonna know you, right? They know your personality. They know who you are." Like your boy said, like, "Oh, you wanna talk about money now, right?" Do you think that they're getting that message kinda subtly?
I still think they're young enough that I'm not exactly sure where they're at and where they're going.
Mhm.
They change and they surprise me still.
Right.
Um, but you mentioned being a libertarian and being a parent,
Mhm.
and it's kind of the uh, the concept of every individual has rights, and
Mhm.
so maybe that's a better way of saying, like, treating them like an adult. Like, I've treated them like a person. I've treated them like they have equal say in this. Like,
Mhm.
not necessarily meaning I'm going to do what they say, but you have to treat it like this isn't a dictatorship.
Right.
It's their life too. And so, like, I've tried to kind of do some of the things where I'm saying, like, all right, like, how I am, and that I'm trying hard right now, but, like, can I do my thing real quick? And, giving them buy into the situation instead of just doing it and saying, deal with it.
Mm. Gotcha. I got you. I think I do something similar, sometimes with my son when I'm a little maybe frustrated with him with something, but he's not really in trouble. But because I'm a little frustrated, now I'm not talking necessarily as pleasant as maybe I once was, a few moments ago, a few moments prior to that. And so I'll say, look, you're not in trouble right now. Daddy's a little frustrated with you. So let's talk about this, right? And so I'm just, and I'm curious, like, is he going to learn some of these, because I'm expressing to him, hey, here's where I am. And and hopefully, without even me necessarily trying to teach him, hopefully it will come through to him to be more aware of where he is in that moment, as he gets older. I mean, not right now because he's 5, because like he's gonna be like, "Can
Yeah,
I play
like
video games?"
in like corporate speak, like the let's unpack this,
Okay.
so like kind of like setting the stage and saying, like, well, the school called
Hmm.
and you shouldn't do what you did.
Hmm.
So what are we doing here? Like, what's the plan going forward here? Like, you explain this to me instead of me explaining it to you. You explain it to me. Like, how do I not get a call tomorrow? Like,
Mm.
let's make this about, uh damage control, right?
Right.
Like,
And more interactive.
and more interactive, and give them the decision making.
Hmm.
Don't tell them what you think. Have it just be, have them have input into it, have them make the decision.
Hmm. That's interesting. All right, and so then on the flip side, because the question a moment ago was like, "Hey, do you have anything that you look back and you're like, more on the negative side? Is there anything that you look back and you're just like, man, that's a proud moment for you, like you're tooting your horn in a sense over a particular situation? Maybe it was a situation where you would have normally overreacted, but then you didn't, something like that, or how they, something that they did, anything. Just yeah, like, is there anything that really just stands out and you're like, that one, that's a big fat W for me?
there's a lot,
Mhm. Good.
they're
I like
they're
it.
constantly doing cool stuff. And I think for me personally, my favorite thing is that I don't get credit for anything. Like that
Mhm,
they stand on their own.
mhm,
It's not like when they do something with my folks, it's not like you got them to do that. It's
mhm,
they're nice kids. I can't believe they did that. Like I'm not even part of it. Like I don't even enter the equation.
mhm.
And so they can do it on their own. It's kind of like, a month after they learn how to ride a bike, they forget you taught them how to ride the bike, but they can get up, they can go somewhere, they can do whatever they want, they can play with their friends. You help them with that, but now it's them, it's
Mhm.
theirs. And I read a great quote the other day, and I was talking to my son about it, and it said that your father is the only man you'll ever meet that wants you to do better than him.
Oh, I saw a quote I saw that same quote from somebody online.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, might have been the same person that we saw it from.
Yeah. And I told my son that, and it's, again, it's framing it. Like I want him to know that that's
Mhm.
absolutely true. Like I would be very glad if he did everything better than me.
Right. Absolutely. I think and it's funny, I responded I don't know if we're talking about the same person who tweeted that out, but I saw somebody tweet that particular quote, and then I responded and I said, something to the effect of like, "Absolutely, if my son is better than me, I will have succeeded as a father." Right? Like, that's to me one of the metrics, and that's what I look for. Like, and it could be in any, many different areas, not necessarily any in particular or any combination necessarily, but maybe he ends up being, healthier and lives longer, right? Maybe he, uh, I'm trying to think off the cuff. Maybe he has, his first marriage he does better at, and then so he ends up staying married, right, rather than getting a divorce and going through a second one, right? Not that I don't love my wife and all that, but just like I clearly didn't do a good job the first time around, and so hopefully he will. If he's more successful, like if he decides to have a podcast or whatever, like if he does way better than me, like that will be awesome. Like I will be a proud dad for sure. Both in in him, and then also a little bit on, for me as well, just knowing that, hey, you know what? That's kind of some evidence that, I didn't do so bad after all. So I think that's something to look forward to. So, all right, what else are we missing out of the conversation of raising independent children that we should touch upon?
Uh, Another one I wrote down was always challenge them
Hmm.
and try to get them outside of their comfort zone as much as possible. Now, that's not saying don't have a safety net,
Right.
but try to get them outside of their comfort zone as much as possible. And so I always had them doing crazy stuff. Like my youngest is like amazing with his hands.
Hmm.
And I realized that at an early age. So he's been building computers since he was little. I've had him doing electrical work since he was like a preteen. He fixed our washing machine. And so I just like throw him in and let him sink or swim and
Hmm.
try to be supportive, but also try to be hands off and say, I'm gonna let you do this.
Hmm.
And so now like he thinks he was actually giving me crap the other day. He's like, I do all the home repairs and stuff. Like I'm like, yeah, because I do all the cleaning out the drains and the toilets.
Right.
And I let you do the cool stuff
Right.
because I want you to be a capable person.
Right.
And then I also try to put context to it and say, you can do more electrical work than most guys my age.
Right.
And that's an incredible thing that you'll never lose. You'll always have that.
Right.
And then like kind of unpacking it again, like think about how much money you'll save over your lifetime that you don't have to hire somebody to fix your dryer, or in today's day and age, you'd have to buy a new one, right?
Mhm.
Like they
Right.
probably it's $200 for the service call. Well, a few $100 more and you get a brand new one. So who's going to pay 200 for the service call, right?
Right.
So, I talk him through all that so he can kind of like see a roadmap and a blueprint for his life that of him being independent,
Mhm.
self-sufficient and successful. And, you kind of try to paint that picture for him.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, that you mentioned being self-sufficient and being able to do things. The other day, this last weekend, I was out and, we have a lot of trees, and so we tend to get a lot of leaves that have to be picked up, and I've got a riding mower to with a bagger kit, and so I was out trying to do that, and I started hearing some weird noise underneath the mower deck, and, my son's out usually with me now. He doesn't always participate, but sometimes he does, it just depends on what's going on. And, so, but he sees me doing these things. And so what was interesting was there was an influencer that I saw, and I think this was one of those influencers that says crazy things just to get a rise out of people or whatever, or just to get attention. And I don't even know who it was. Like it was somebody I'd never seen before. It just popped up in my feed, and they were talking like, like, hey, if you fix things, like they were basically saying it's not a flex, it's not something cool to say that you fix something because like that means you just don't have enough money and you can't pay somebody to do it. And I was like, well, this is a bunch of rubbish because I have the money to pay somebody to do a lot of things that I actually do. However, as a good example, back to my mower, I heard this noise and I could pay somebody to come and fix it, but it was a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon and I'm in the middle of working. So I take off the mower deck, I flip it over, and I find that there was a wire wrapped around like the down rod. And so I just grabbed some needle nose pliers and I did it. And that wasn't terribly technical, right? Like not very at all. But the thing is, like, imagine like if I didn't have the skill set to even do that, because it did require a little bit of effort to disconnect uh, the 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 mower deck, and then and kind of look and see and observe and identify what the problem was, and then resolve it, which was it was an easy thing to fix. But like, sure, I could pay for that, but having the skills allowed me to take 20 minutes or so, maybe 25, get it resolved, put it back together, and it only took about 20, 25 minutes altogether. And then I was back to mode. I would have had to wait until somebody could come out and, either pick it up or come out and do a service. And who knows how long that would have been. So it's very interesting. I agree. I think that, having your boys, or your kid, if you have daughters, them too. I don't have one, but I would do the same thing. I'd be like, hey, well, here's a screwdriver. Let's go work this out. Right. Let's go figure out how to do this, because the more that you can do, the better off you are, in my opinion. And then also, the more independent they can be. And I think that one thing that makes, independence a great thing is when you can be independent, do it yourself, but also if you get to the point where you can choose if you want to do that in the first place. Okay, so last thing, I love ending on now. Usually, what I try to do is go and dig up like something from the dad's group on Facebook, and I just ask the dad that comes on the show, like, "Hey, what do you think about this? What's your thoughts?" And I don't give any commentary on it. It's totally for you. Now, I didn't do that. I kind of neglected that because I was busy today, and it was I just got really busy. So I'm going to ask you about something that I talked about this morning. I don't know if you've probably seen it going around. There was a dad in Texas who, I think he was like 25-ish, somewhere around there, and he's videotaped, taking his, like, 3-month-old baby and using it as a wiper on the car. In Texas, they had a big snowstorm. So if anybody hasn't seen it, it's like a 30-second clip, and it's not very long, and it just shows the dad wiping, the snow off, and then picks him up. It looks like he kisses him and laughs and then continues to do the snow, and they posted it to TikTok. It has been since taken down, and then a lot of people were outraged by it, to the point that he's actually being investigated by CPS. So, like, if you want to know my thought, folks, you can go back and listen to the other show. I'm not giving it here because this is for free to talk about. Tell me your thoughts on that.
I saw it. I mean, the baby looked real young.
Mhm.
So, and I'm originally from Chicago, so
Okay.
I'm used to the cold. So I guess it would depend on how cold it was and stuff like that. But my first reaction was it was kind of funny.
Mhm.
And then maybe it went on like a little too long.
Okay.
But you don't know, like, were they running back in the house? And, so it's, you do stuff, and like some of it's a little sketchy, and, I've done way sketchier than that for sure. So, I mean, I'm not judging, that's for sure.
Gotcha. All right. Well, sir, we're coming up to a time. I know you got to get going because you've got, I think, a different show that you've got to get
There's
ready
a,
for and
th-
jump on. Go ahead.
there's a couple questions. Do you mind if I answer them?
Oh, yeah. Did I miss something? I thought I got them. And I apologize. I'm not trying to be that
Your
rude.
lovely producer put a couple questions in for me.
Oh, yes. Yes, there was a I meant to get to this where there was one question I saw, and I don't why did I miss that? Um, yes, here it is. Here's the one I first saw, and then if you see another one that you want to get to. So it says, "Free, what do your boys think about you being interviewed for that BBC article?"
Yeah, so a little context. So I got contacted by the BBC as an influencer that was putting out information that was influencing the election.
Mm,
And the BBC's got kind of a sketchy
right.
reputation as it pertains to freedom of speech,
Mhm.
and they're definitely more statist, and they've got their state media, right?
Right.
So they push state narratives, and they've been you know kind of banging the drum of all the stuff that the oppressive regime over there has been doing. And so I knew I was kind of getting myself into a bad situation, but I was like, what the heck, I'm a big boy, I can hang. I trust myself in those types of situations. So they actually flew to where I live and brought like a whole crew and interviewed
Wow.
me for like 4 hours. And so my kids were like, you're going to end up on some sort of watch list, or, whatever watch list you're not already on with your goofy online stuff. Like
Yep.
I said, the oldest is more mature than me still. And
Right.
he's like, you're an idiot. Don't do this. And my youngest same was like, you're an idiot. Don't do this. And I was like, what the hell? You only live once. So I did it, but they thought it was sketchy, and they thought it was kind of cringy. But, you know, when they get older too, you got to do your life, right? There's certain things that they don't agree with, and you got to live your own life too. So the oldest and I don't agree on politics. The youngest and I do. So it's, but that might be temporary. Who knows? Once he goes to college, he might come back, completely different. But,
Right.
um, but they, some of it was nice. Some of it was like they want me to be safe. They don't want me to get in trouble. They don't want me
Mhm.
to get my door kicked in.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then some of it's just, I've been embarrassing their entire lives, and that's not going to change. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, right? When you're, such a popular guy that the media comes out to your house. One day I'll get there. One day. And my son can be like, "Whoa, what's going on here, dad?"
it was on BBC One. I was like, I mean, that's like the biggest
Right.
English speaking media channel in the entire world. I was like, what just happened?
Right.
And of course, every single thing they said was wrong. They put my answers with questions they didn't ask. They
Right.
said I
Right.
was they said I was an independent, but I would vote for Trump, because
Right.
they asked me, like, basically they asked me, like, gun to your head, who would you vote for? I'm like, well, there's no way I'd vote for Kamala.
Mhm.
And, so, and I said Biden was terrible, but I'd also said I was a libertarian, and, you know, I'd never voted for a Republican or a Democrat for president. I told them all of these things, and they're like, so he's a Trump supporter. And
Yeah. That's what it
then
is.
they said I use AI to make fake images to influence people, and like all of my memes that I make and stuff, and they're obviously not real. Like, I'm not
Right.
trying to say, Biden was on the grassy knoll or something, and so it was really funny. Like, every single thing they used was misinformation. And
That's
and
fun.
the irony of them saying I was spreading misinformation in an article and in an interview that they spread misinformation, like literally every sentence. I'm glad I did it, because it was like I would have never believed that it was that bad until I went
Right.
through it.
That's funny. I'll have to check it out. And just because that, I think that'll be interesting to go and check out. I think that Liberty Lady also asked if you're having your Not a Real Libertarian game show tonight. Is that correct?
I am, yeah.
All
I
right.
got to get
Let's,
you on, DL. Have you seen it?
I haven't. So here's I don't know about you. You know what? You're a fellow podcaster. So I want to get your take real quick before we end the show. Do you watch a lot or listen to a lot of podcasts?
Well, not as many as before I started doing it, but
Right.
I do try to make time for my friends. And, like, I like to support guys like you. I mean, I think your mission's just amazing, and I think you do a
Appreciate it.
great job. And like I said, I catch the morning one more often. So it's like, that's a nice chill one.
Mhm.
And like, I like, getting your thoughts. Um, and then I have to make time for it, and it's almost become a little bit more like work at this point, where like when my son's not around, I'll go out for a walk and I'll be like, all right, like, I want to listen to, the Bears game or whatever, but instead I'm gonna listen to this,
Right.
but I mean, luckily my friends are some of the best out there, so like I'm
Mhm.
getting great information, and it's
Right.
well spent time. It's not just supporting them. Like, it's really
Right.
actually useful to me, and it's useful in my podcasting, and it's useful in my life. So yeah, it's tough though, but I got to get you on the show. So can I
Sure.
give you the premise of the show real
Sure.
quick?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's basically a goof on the old adage that we argue with each other and tell each other that you're not a real libertarian.
Right.
And so it's a game show to basically prove that you're not a real libertarian. And
Okay.
so I ask questions and they give answers. And then the twist is, I like to call it, when I'm talking to my libertarian friends, I like to call it decentralized scoring, because the chat actually picks the winners, assigns points, takes away points. And so like everybody ends up with negative points, and it's pure chaos, but it's
Right.
really funny. But the idea is to use. I was so burnt out after the election. I was a
Mhm.
Chase supporter, so I was one of the people that was getting called names all summer
Yeah.
long, and
Yep. I feel
you,
you.
yeah, and so I was so burnt out after the election. I was just like, I can't just do straight politics
Mhm.
anymore, and so I had come up with the idea of the game show like way before that, but it seemed so idiotic that I was just like, nobody would watch this, and but then I was like, I needed to do something different that was humorous and fun and entertaining. And I was like, well, we could teach people through entertainment and humor.
Mhm.
And the other problem is, like, being a libertarian, the answer to almost every question is no. Like,
Yeah.
should we tax people? No. Should we take away people's guns? No. Should we, like,
Right.
everything's no. So like when you interview somebody, the answer is always no. And
Right.
so you have to think of different ways of making the interview interesting.
Right.
And so the answer is usually no on the game show, but with the interaction and stuff like that, we
Mhm.
get the information across in an entertaining way that keeps people engaged. So,
That's
but you'll
pretty
have to
neat.
check it out. It's pretty funny. Like, I mean, especially if like you understand like the inner workings of our philosophy and ideology,
Mhm.
and even the party itself. Like, we make fun of the
Right.
party. And
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. One last comment here. This comes from C.S. Townsend. He says, "Great show, Liberty Dad. Thanks again for the book. You're absolutely welcome. Haven't started reading yet, but thanks nonetheless. I'm sure you'll get to it. I understand because as I was just telling Free here, like it's very difficult sometimes to squeeze in some of this stuff in your day to day. But I've spent so much time preparing for my podcast." And then I also have, like a family. I got a dog that I got to walk, and I've got my son that I hang out with and help him with his homework. And, I'm generally the cook, and I have a 40-hour a week job. So like, I have to really, really make time for a podcast. And then a lot of times it just ends up being research. So it's kind of tough. It's not like it used to be. So
no,
there's
this
that
is
challenge.
like chill, drink a beer. Like, this
Gotcha.
is that was kind of the idea, is like, this is almost like our fantasy football for politics nerds. Like,
Okay. Gotcha.
and the other thing too, the pro tip on podcasts is listen at like 2 times speed or
Yep.
1.5, and you know you can skip the intro, stuff like that. So like
Right.
we do 2 hours, and you could probably I do try to edit them down and repost them to
Mhm.
get out, like we talk to people in the comments, stuff like that, and edit some of that stuff out. But yeah, you can listen to it faster, but it's a trip. It's pretty funny.
Gotcha. All right, sir. Well, I know you need to get going, and I need to get going as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I think I'm gonna put you backstage, but your mic still might be hot, so don't say anything bad about me just yet.
Well, one
Go ahead.
one last thing I just want to
Yes.
say, in addition to the game show, I do, like, we call the channel Freedom Uncut,
Mhm.
and included in that are what I like to call series. And in the series, I'm doing one with Mike Decentralized,
Mhm.
and it's all about localism and agorism, and it's based on his book called Township Liberation. If you haven't read his book, it's $5 on Amazon. It's called Township Liberation. Um, and so we do that on Thursdays at 8 p.m. On Wednesdays, I do a show with Cash Kelly, who's a J6er, and it's a series on faith and freedom. And we've been exploring how faith and freedom interact. And, if we decentralize the government, can the faith communities pick up some of the stuff that the government pretends like they're doing and do for their communities? And then in addition to that, I'm doing a new show starting a week from Monday about Doge, which
Okay.
is Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency.
Okay.
And that's with Casey Rasmussen, who's a good friend of mine. And we're going to be dissecting, is Doge really working? Are they cutting down the government? Because obviously that's like core to our belief system is, get that 7 trillion down to a whole lot less than 7 trillion in spending. So
Right.
we're doing that on Mondays. So I just wanted to throw that out there and say hi to my friends and thank the lovely Terry Batts, who you said was in the comments, and she's our producer and she puts
Oh,
up with
good.
so much stuff. She's amazing. So
All right. And that Liberty Lady has put in there. She produces the show for me. She put in the chat there that people can find you at Freedom Uncut over on Twitter. Where else can they find you, sir?
that's the show Twitter, which is kind
Oh,
of
okay.
less used. The one that's under my name now, the Freedom for Us for All on X, is my active one.
Okay.
And yeah, then I have a Rumble channel and I have a YouTube channel. But I link to them all from my X pretty much. And my main area is X.
Okay. Same here. Okay. Awesome. Well, I think that's it, sir. I didn't mean to try to cut you off before
Yeah,
getting
no
you
worries. I just wanted
started.
to, I had to say hi to my friends and make sure
Absolutely.
they know that I appreciate them and want to promote them. So,
Absolutely. I totally get it, sir. And I don't mean to be rude and trying to rush you off. I'm just trying to be considerate of your time.
yeah, no, that's cool.
So, all right. So I think it puts you backstage. But again, as I said at the very beginning of the show, folks, this is the second guest now on Rumble. So, on Rumble Studio. So I'm still getting used to all the controls. So try not to hot mic there, sir,
Yeah.
if you're
Uh,
still on.
Thanks, DL. Thanks, that Liberty Lady. Appreciate you all, and hope to see you soon.
All right. Awesome. See you around, sir. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. I love talking to dads. So if you're a dad or if you know a dad that has something to say, and it doesn't have to be like somebody that's got like tons of education and all kind of, knowledge. It can just be a regular everyday dad that just has something important that they think, hey, you know what? I bet other people would be interested in hearing about this. Let me know. I want to bring them on the show every Friday, either 7:30 in the morning or 6:30 p.m. for those dads that cannot be there that early. I will bring you on the show. We will have a chat. It will be loads of fun. We will learn from each other. People will learn from the both of us. So reach out to me. Let me know if you're a dad and you want to be on the show. Otherwise, let me get to this closing, and then I will see you guys Monday. Remember, Monday, and I'm starting to feel sick, but I'm gonna power through it if I have to. Monday, I'm kicking off a new way to do my bill reviews, and I'm gonna do 35 bill reviews in my show, my regular 1 hour show, and I'm gonna make it entertaining. I don't even know how I'm going to do that, but that's the goal. We're kicking off a new era of bill reviews. They will be entertaining. So join me for that 7:30 in the morning, as I am normally Monday through Friday. So, all right, there we go. Let's get to this closing and then have a good evening. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.